The challenge in the arena. The arena shook with the sound of alien voices, thousands of them, echoing off the stone walls. The sky above was covered with a metal dome, flashing with screens that showed every corner of the battlefield. In the center of the arena, one human stood alone, his wrists still bruised from the heavy chains that had dragged him here. His name was Rylan, a soldier of Earth, but today he was nothing more than a prisoner. Around him, 10 alien warriors stepped forward, their armor shining under the burning lights. They were tall, powerful, and trained killers. Each one carried weapons, axes, spears, blades longer than Rylan's entire body. The crowd cheered, not for him, but for the warriors who were ready to tear him apart. The warlord of this alien empire sat on the throne at the far end of the arena. His eyes glowed with cruel amusement. He had ordered this fight as a spectacle, a game. For him, a human's death was entertainment. Rylan was meant to be humiliated, broken, and erased in front of the galaxy. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. 1 human, 10 champions. Who will survive? The crowd roared with laughter. They called humans weak, fragile, nothing more than prey. Rylan's hands were empty. No blade, no gun, no shield. He had only the broken remains of his chains wrapped around his fists. He looked at them, then at the warriors. His heart pounded, but his eyes burned with fire. He remembered the words of his old commander on Earth. When the world expects you to die, that's when you show them who you are. The first warrior stepped forward. A massive beast with red skin and teeth sharp as knives. His blade scraped the sand. Throwing sparks, he grinned, certain this fight would end in seconds. The warrior charged. His steps shook the ground. He raised his blade high. The crowd leaned forward, ready to see the human cut in half. But Rylan moved. He slipped to the side faster than the warrior expected. The blade missed, slamming into the sand. In the same second, Rylan swung his chain, wrapping it around the alien's throat. He pulled with all his strength, and the warrior stumbled. Choking, the crowd gasped. They had never seen a human move like that. Rylan's fist smashed into the alien's jaw. Bones cracked. The warrior collapsed, his massive body hitting the ground like thunder. Silence fell for a heartbeat, then a roar of shock spread across the arena. The other 9 warriors stared. Their laughter faded. They had expected an easy kill. Instead, one of their own lay broken at the human's feet. Rylan's chest heaved, but he stood tall, his chain dripped with blood. He looked at the 9 remaining warriors. His voice was low, but it carried across the arena. Who's next? The crowd shouted in anger and disbelief. Some demanded his death at once. Others whispered in fear. The warlord leaned forward in his throne. His amusement gone, his eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary human. This was something else. The 9 warriors began to circle, their movements slower now, more careful. They had seen the speed, the precision, the raw will of this man. They were predators, but the prey had turned. Rylan shifted his stance, his feet pressed into the sand. His grip on the chain tightened. He knew he could die here. But he would not kneel. He would not give them the satisfaction. In his mind, he saw Earth, the blue oceans, the mountains, the people he had sworn to protect. He thought of their laughter, their courage, their history of fighting against impossible odds. Humans had always been outnumbered, but they had always found a way. The announcer tried to stir the crowd again, shouting, "The human bleeds soon. Watch him fall." But his words trembled, as if even he was unsure. The second warrior took a step forward. His weapon gleamed, his eyes locked on Rylan. But something was different now. This was no longer a fight for sport. This was survival. Rylan's lips curved into a thin smile. He was ready. The arena held its breath. The warriors tensed. The human, small against their giant frames, stood unbroken. His shadow stretched long across the sand. And in that silence, A new thought entered the crowd, whispered from one alien to another. What if the human wins? Asterisk the first strike. The body of the first fallen warrior still lay in the sand, blood spreading dark under the lights. The crowd was not laughing anymore. Their voices were louder now, but mixed some shouting for vengeance, others whispering in fear. For the first time in their history of arena battles, a human had killed one of their champions. The 9 remaining warriors spread out, circling Rylan. Their armor clanged with each step, their weapons glowing with sharp energy. They had seen what the human could do, and their pride demanded revenge. Rylan wiped the sweat from his brow. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes stayed locked on them. His chain swung loose in his hand, dripping red. The sand beneath his feet shifted as he stepped. Light and ready, he looked small against them, but his shadow stretched long and sharp. The second warrior roared, his chest vibrating like thunder. He was taller than the rest, a brute covered in scarred plates. He charged forward, his spear cutting the air. The crowd rose to its feet, screaming. Rylan waited. His muscles tightened, his heart pounded. He knew this strike was not meant to test, it was meant to kill. The spear came down like lightning, but Rylan moved, his body twisted to the side, the blade missing him by inches. Sand exploded where it struck. The brute's strength was terrifying. But strength without precision was useless. Rylan's chain flashed. He whipped it around the warrior's arm. Yanking with sudden force, the giant stumbled. Surprised by the speed, in that instant, Rylan's knee slammed into the warrior's throat. The alien choked, his weapon clattering to the ground. The crowd gasped, a wave of shock racing through them. But the fight was not over. Another warrior rushed from the side, his axe swinging. Rylan barely ducked, the blade slicing a piece of his shoulder. Pain shot through his body, warm blood running down his arm. He staggered. The crowd cheered again, thinking this was the end. But Rylan's eyes hardened. Pain did not break him. It fueled him with a roar of his own. He twisted the chain free from the brute's arm and swung it wide. The chain cracked across the second warrior's face, bones shattering under the strike. The alien fell screaming, blood pouring from his mouth. 2 warriors down, 8 remained. The warlord leaned forward in his throne. His eyes narrowed. He had enjoyed this game, but now his smile faded. This human was not just a soldier, he was a storm. The remaining warriors looked at each other, unease growing in their eyes. They had fought countless enemies, but never like this. Their size gave them power, their armor gave them strength. But the human had something else, a will that refused to break. Rylan tightened the chain around his fist. His voice was raw but steady. Come then, all of you. The warriors snarled, humiliated. They attacked together this time, weapons flashing. In unison, the air exploded with movement. Steel clashed against chain. Sand rose like smoke. Sparks lit the ground as blades cut stone. Rylan ducked, spun, dodged. Every strike aimed to end him. But every miss brought the warriors closer to each other. Their heavy weapons collided as they tried to hit him. Their rage blinded them. Their size slowed them. Rylan slipped through them like water. His fists struck jaws. His chains wrapped around throats. His body burned with pain, but his mind stayed sharp. He was fighting not only for his life, but for Earth, for the right of humanity to be more than prey. The crowd watched in silence now, their laughter dead. Every move of the human was a revelation, every survival a miracle. The announcer's voice cracked as he shouted, "The human still fights." But even he sounded unsure now with a sudden strike. Rylan sent one more warrior crashing to the ground. The alien skull cracked against stone. He did not rise again. 3 down, 7 remained. The warriors circled back, panting, their armor dented, their blood spilling. They stared at the human with something new fear. Rylan, leading from his shoulder, breathing heavy, stood tall, his chain hung loose, but his eyes glowed like fire. He whispered under his breath, words only he could hear. Not today. The warlord's hand gripped the armrest of his throne until the stone cracked. His voice was low, full of anger. End him. But as the warriors looked at Rylan, doubt filled their hearts. They had never doubted before. They were champions of their empire, undefeated, unstoppable. Yet now, facing one human, their hands shook. The crowd fell quiet, all eyes on the arena. For the first time, the galaxy saw something they had never believed. A human standing unbroken against 10 warriors, and he was winning. Asterisk. Fear in their eyes, the arena floor was painted with blood, some red, some black. The smell heavy in the air. 3 warriors lay broken, their bodies still. The sand swallowed their weight, but the sound of their fall still echoed in every corner of the dome. The crowd, once filled with laughter and jeers, had gone quiet. Their voices turned to whispers. Uncertain, afraid, their eyes fixed on the lone human standing in the center. His chain stained with blood, his shoulder bleeding, but his stance still firm. Rylan breathed hard, each breath sharp and painful. His muscles burned, his skin stung where blades had cut him, yet his eyes did not waver. They were locked on the 7 warriors who remained, warriors who were no longer laughing. These were champions of their empire, trained killers. Their victories were countless, their strength unmatched. But now, for the first time, they hesitated. Their steps slowed, their grip on weapons tighter. Fear. It was small at first, a flicker in their eyes, but it grew with every heartbeat. They had never feared before. But this human was different. He did not die when he was supposed to. He did not kneel. He fought like a beast that refused to be caged. The warlord on his throne saw it too. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed. His champions, his pride, were faltering. His voice cut through the silence, low and dangerous. Do not step back. Kill him. The warriors straightened, forcing their fear down. They roared together, shaking the air. Their weapons clashed against their shields. They tried to drown their fear with sound, to remind themselves of their strength. But Rylan only smiled, a thin, bloody smile. He saw it. He felt it. The tremor in their hearts, the weakness in their pride. He raised his chain and swung it once in the air, the sound sharp and loud. Come, he said, his voice rough but steady. The warriors charged, 3 from the front, 2 from the sides, 2 from behind. Their blades cut the air, sparks flashing. Sand exploded beneath their heavy steps. Rylan's body moved like fire. He ducked under one strike, twisted past another. His chain caught the leg of a warrior, and yanked. The alien crashed to the ground, and before he could rise, Rylan slammed his heel into his skull. The crack silenced the crowd. 6 remained. Another warrior's axe came down. Rylan raised the chain, wrapping it around the handle. With a roar, he pulled the weapon free. The alien's balance broke, and Rylan drove the axe into his chest. The scream was cut short. 5 remained. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, but in panic. Some shouted in disbelief. Others cried out that this was impossible. The announcer's voice shook. The human kills again. Rylan's body was shaking now, blood dripping from his wounds. His breaths were ragged, his vision blurred for a moment, but his will stood firm. He remembered Earth, the battles of his people, the history written in blood and fire. Humans had always been cornered, outnumbered, yet they survived, and he would survive too. The 5 remaining warriors circled tighter, no longer sure of themselves. Their weapons did not move as smoothly. Their roars did not sound as confident. They looked at each other, as if asking silently, "Can we defeat him?" And Rylan saw it again, that flicker, stronger now, that shadow in their eyes, fear. The warlord slammed his fist into the throne. His voice thundered, You are warriors. End this insect." But his words were laced with anger, not belief. Rylan dragged the chain across the sand, leaving a dark trail. His voice was low, but the entire arena felt it. "You thought humans were weak. You were wrong." The warriors hesitated, their bodies tense. They wanted to move, but their minds resisted. Every step toward him felt heavier. Every strike they imagined ended with failure. The crowd leaned forward, silent. The fear of the warriors was now the fear of the Empire. For if one human could do this, what could many do? Ryland's blood dripped, his body swayed, but he did not fall. He raised his head high, his eyes burning. He was more than a prisoner now, more than a fighter. He was a symbol, and the galaxy was watching. The warriors finally rushed again, desperation. Replacing pride, their blades screamed, their roars shook the air. But inside their eyes, deep and clear, Ryland saw the truth. They were afraid. Asterisk the turning point. The 5 warriors tightened their circle, their heavy breaths echoing through the arena. The sand was stained with blood, human and alien alike. Bodies of the fallen lay twisted on the ground, a reminder that this fight was no longer sport. It was survival. Ryland's arm throbbed where the axe had sliced him. Warm blood ran down his skin, dripping into the sand. His vision blurred for a moment. His knees almost buckled, but he forced himself to stand. His chain rattled in his hand, a weapon born. From his prison, the warlord leaned forward in his throne. His sharp teeth clenched. His voice was low but carried across the arena. "Break him. Tear him apart." The warriors roared in answer, but it was not the roar of pride anymore. It was the roar of fear trying to hide itself. They rushed in together, blades flashing. The first strike came from behind. Ryland twisted, but not fast enough. A spear sliced across his back. Fire shot through his nerves. He staggered forward, another blade nearly cutting his throat. He ducked at the last second, rolling across the sand. The crowd screamed, some cheered. At the sight of human blood, others gasped at the fact he still lived. Ryland's body shook, pain tearing through every muscle, but he pushed himself up, his teeth clenched, his breath like fire in his chest. The warriors closed in. One swung a mace. The air itself cracked. Ryland raised his chain, wrapping it tight around the weapon. He pulled, but the alien's strength was monstrous. The mace crashed into his ribs. The sound of bones cracking echoed across the arena. The crowd cried out. Some shouted that it was over, that the human had finally fallen. Ryland dropped to one knee, coughing blood into the sand. His vision darkened at the edges. His body screamed to give up, but deep inside, something refused. A voice whispered in his mind, the voice of Earth, the voice of every soldier before him. "Do not kneel, do not break." With a roar that shook the dust from the arena walls, Ryland rose again. His ribs burned, his back bled, but he stood. He yanked the chain with sudden force. Pulling the warrior forward, the alien stumbled, off balance for a single second. That was all Ryland needed. He drove his knee into the alien's face, bone shattered. The warrior fell limp. Silence echoing behind his fall. 4 remained. The warlord slammed his fist into the throne so hard the stone cracked. His eyes blazed with rage. His champions were falling, and the galaxy was watching. The 4 warriors hesitated. Their weapons trembled in their hands. Ryland, broken and bleeding, looked at them with fire still in his eyes. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "Is this the best you have?" The crowd erupted. Some aliens screamed in anger, others in awe. Some shouted for Ryland to be killed. Others whispered that he might actually survive. The warriors rushed again, this time in blind fury. They no longer fought as champions. They fought as beasts desperate to end what they did not understand. Blades cut the air. One slashed across Ryland's leg, blood spraying. He stumbled. Another blade cut across his arm. His body screamed with pain. He could barely breathe, but his mind sharpened. His focus turned into something cold. He remembered. Earth again, the stories of humans who had fought impossible wars, soldiers who had stood against armies and refused to fall. Humanity had always been small, always outnumbered, but humanity had always found a way. Ryland dropped low, using the weight of his broken body. His chain wrapped around another warrior's ankle. With a savage pull, he dragged the alien down. Before the warrior could rise, Ryland drove the chain into his throat. Crushing it, 3 remained. The arena was shaking now with noise, not laughter, not cheers, but chaos. The crowd no longer knew what to feel. They had come to watch a human die, but now they were watching history. The warlord rose from his throne. His cloak dragged across the stone. His voice thundered, "Finish him, or do not return alive." The 3 warriors exchanged looks. Their pride demanded victory, but their fear screamed louder. Every breath they took was heavy. Every step they made toward the human felt like walking into fire. Ryland swayed, blood dripping from every wound, his body broken, his vision blurred. Yet his spirit was unshaken. He raised his head, his lips twisting into a bloody smile. "You think I'm done?" He growled. His voice filled the arena like thunder. "I haven't even started." The warriors froze. For a moment, they saw not a wounded human, but a predator, a force, a storm, and in their eyes, for the first time in the history of their empire, the galaxy saw the truth aliens could fear, and they feared a human asterisk. The human way of war, the arena floor, looked like a battlefield. Blood soaked the sand. Broken weapons glinted under the lights, and the bodies of the fallen lay still. Out of 10 champions, only 3 remained. And still, the human stood. Ryland's body was torn with wounds. His ribs burned with every breath. Blood poured down his arm, and his leg dragged across the sand. Yet his eyes were alive. His spirit burned like fire, stronger than the pain. The crowd, once cruel and mocking, was no longer united. Half screamed for his death. Half sat frozen in silence. They could not understand what they were watching. How could a fragile creature, a human, stand against the might of their warriors? The warlord leaned forward, his hands pressed tight against the throne, his face dark with fury. He had meant this fight as humiliation, but now it was turning into something dangerous. The galaxy was watching, and the galaxy was learning. Ryland raised his chain again, the links dripping with blood. His voice was hoarse, but it carried across the entire arena. "You think strength is power," he said, "but humans, we fight with something else." The 3 warriors hesitated, circling him like predators, but their eyes betrayed them. They were no longer predators. They were prey pretending to be strong. Ryland's mind sharpened. He thought of Earth, of every desperate battle in human history. Humans had fought with sticks when enemies had steel. They had fought with courage when enemies had numbers. They had fought with creativity when all else was lost. And they had won. The first warrior charged. His blade raised high. His roar filled the dome. His strike aimed to split the human in 2, but Ryland moved differently this time. He did not dodge backward. He stepped forward, closer, so close the alien's blade lost its full force. With a brutal motion, Ryland grabbed a handful of sand and threw it into the alien's eyes. The warrior screamed, blinded, swinging wildly. The crowd gasped. They had never seen such a trick. To them, war was strength against strength, blade against blade, but humans. Humans cheated death. Humans found a way. Ryland leapt onto the blinded warrior's back, wrapping his chain around his throat. He pulled with every ounce of strength left in his body. The alien staggered, clawing at his throat, choking, until, finally, he fell forward into the sand, unmoving. 2 remained. The crowd was no longer just shocked. They were afraid. They whispered to each other, pointing, their faces pale. The announcer's voice cracked as he shouted, "The human, the Human kills again. But his words sounded hollow. The next warrior stepped back, his hands shaking. He was huge, his armor scarred from 100 victories. But now he trembled like a child. His eyes darted to the warlord, as if begging for permission to retreat. Warlord's face twisted with rage. He pointed at Rylan, his voice thundering. "Kill him or die where you stand." The warrior roared, forcing his fear into anger. He swung his axe with both hands, the blade screaming through the air. Raylan's body burned, his wounds screamed, but his mind was alive, sharper than the steel aimed at him. He waited until the last second, then dropped low, the axe missing by inches. Sparks flew as the weapon struck stone. With lightning speed, Rylan snatched a broken piece of alien armor from the ground. Its edge jagged, sharp enough to cut. He drove it into the warrior's side. Twisting, the alien howled, staggering back. His blood poured like a river. The crowd's screams rose into chaos. Some shouted for Rylan's death. Others shouted in awe. For the first time in the history of the arena, they were divided. The warrior fell, shaking the ground. His weapon clattered into the sand. His body stilled. One remained. The last warrior stood frozen. His chest heaved. His weapon trembled. He looked at the human not as prey, not even as an enemy, but as something greater, something unstoppable. Raylan's legs shook. His body swayed. He had nothing left to give, yet he stood tall. His chain hung loose at his side. His blood dripped steadily, and still his eyes burned. He looked at the last warrior. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "This is the human way of war." The arena fell silent. Thousands of eyes locked on him. Even the warlord's breath caught. Raylan raised his head high, broken but unbowed. "We do not fight fair. We do not fight clean. We fight to survive. And when you think we are finished, that is when we are strongest." The last warrior's hands shook so badly, the blade nearly slipped. His eyes widened with terror. The galaxy saw it, true fear carved deep into the face of one of their champions. And in that moment, every alien in the arena realized a truth they had refused to believe. Humans were not weak. Humans were not prey. Humans were the storm. The last stand. The arena floor shook with silence. It was a silence so heavy that it pressed on every chest. Out of 10 champions, 9 were gone. Their broken bodies lay scattered across the sand. And still, the human stood. Rylan's body was almost broken. His ribs burned with every breath. Blood poured from cuts on his arms and legs. His vision blurred. His head spun. Yet he stood, unbowed. His chain hung loose at his side. His body swayed, but his eyes still burned with fire. Only one warrior remained, a giant with pale skin, covered in scars from 100 battles. His weapon was a double-bladed axe, its edges glowing with energy. His chest rose and fell with deep, uneven breaths. His eyes locked on Rylan, but they were not eyes of pride. They were eyes of fear. The warlord rose from his throne, his cloak dragging across the stone, his teeth bared in rage. "Kill him now," he thundered, "or do not return alive." The last warrior roared, forcing his fear into sound. He raised his axe high. The crowd screamed. Some shouted in fury. Others shouted in awe. None could look away. Raylan dragged his foot through the sand. His body screamed for rest, but his mind refused. He remembered Earth. He remembered every desperate fight his people had endured. Every war where humans had been outnumbered. Every moment when surrender seemed easier, and every time humanity had said no. The warrior charged. His steps shook the ground. His axe cut the air, sparks flying with its speed. Rylan moved at the last second. His body twisted, pain tearing through him. The axe missed, striking stone with a crack that echoed through the arena. Rylan swung his chain, wrapping it around the warrior's wrist. He pulled with all his strength. His muscles screamed. His ribs felt like fire. but he pulled. The warrior stumbled, his grip breaking for a second. Raylan drove his fist into the warrior's jaw. Blood sprayed, the crowd gasped, the warrior staggered, but he did not fall. With a roar, he swung the axe again, this time catching Raylan across the side. The sound was sickening. Raylan's body flew across the sand. Crashing to the ground, the crowd erupted, some in cheers, some in horror. Blood poured from his side. He could barely breathe. His vision blurred to darkness. The warlord grinned. "It is done," he said, his voice dripping with triumph. But Raylan's hand moved. His fingers closed around the chain. His body trembled. He pushed himself up, inch by inch. His breaths were broken. His bones cracked. But his spirit refused to die. The crowd fell silent again, staring the warriors. Eyes widened, disbelief filling his face. "Why won't you stay down?" He growled. Raylan's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "Because I am human." With a burst of strength that came from something deeper than flesh, Raylan charged. His chain swung like lightning, wrapping around the warrior's weapon. He pulled with everything left in him. His ribs screamed, his wounds tore open, but he pulled. The axe slipped from the warrior's hands. Crashing into the sand, the warrior roared in fury. Swinging his fists, his blows struck Raylan's chest. His face, blood-sprayed, but Raylan did not stop. He slammed his head into the warrior's skull, the crack echoing across the arena. The warrior stumbled, dazed. Raylan wrapped the chain around his throat, pulling tighter, tighter. His arm shook. His vision blurred, but he did not let go. The warrior clawed at the chain, his strength fading. His roars turned to gasps. His body thrashed, then slowed, until finally it fell, crashing into the sand. Unmoving, the arena erupted. Chaos filled the air. Some screamed in terror. Others shouted in disbelief. Some cried out that it was impossible. Others that it was destiny. Raylan stood over the last fallen warrior, his body broken, his blood soaking the sand. His chest heaved. His vision was almost gone. Yet he stood, the warlord's face twisted with rage. His throne cracked under his grip. He had lost his champions. His empire's pride lay dead in the sand. All because of one human. Raylan raised his head high. His body swayed. His voice was hoarse, but it thundered through the dome. "This is the last stand." The crowd went silent. Every alien, every warrior, every child, every eye was fixed on him. And for the first time in their history, the galaxy saw a truth they could never unsee. One human against 10, and only the human walked away alive. Asterisk. The human walks away. The arena was silent. A silence so heavy, it felt like the whole galaxy had stopped breathing. The bodies of 10 alien champions lay in the sand, their weapons broken, their blood dark against the ground, and in the center of it all stood one human, broken, bleeding, yet alive. Raylan's chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. Every breath burned his ribs. Every movement sent pain shooting through his body. His face was bruised, his body torn, his chain hung loose. In his hand, dripping with blood, but his eyes still glowed with fire. The crowd did not cheer. They did not laugh. They only stared, tens of thousands of eyes locked on the human, each alien trying to understand what they had just witnessed. They had come to watch him die, but instead, they had seen something they could never forget. Warlord stood on his throne, his cloak torn from his rage, his fists clenched so hard the stone cracked beneath them. His voice thundered across the arena. "This means nothing. He is only one man." But his words rang hollow. The crowd did not believe them. Deep in their hearts, they knew the truth. If one human could do this, then what could many do? Raylan staggered. His legs shook. His vision blurred. For a moment, it seemed he would fall, but he caught himself, forcing his broken body upright. He raised his head high. His voice came low, hoarse, but filled with power. You thought humans were weak, he said, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. You thought we were prey. You thought we would kneel. He lifted his bloodied chain, his body trembling. But this is who we are. We fight when we have nothing left. We stand when the world wants us broken, and we do not fall. The words echoed across the dome. The crowd sat frozen, their eyes wide. Some whispered in fear, others in awe. Children pulled at their parents, asking if humans were gods. Warriors clenched their weapons tighter, their hands shaking. The warlord's rage twisted into something else, doubt. He looked at the human, and for the first time in his life, he wondered if his empire had awakened something it could not control. Reland turned, his feet dragging through the sand. Every step was agony, but he kept moving. He passed the bodies of the fallen, their weapons silent now. He passed the pools of blood that marked every victory, and with each step, the silence of the crowd grew heavier. He reached the gates of the arena. The guards who once sneered at him now stood frozen, afraid to move, afraid to even breathe. His shadow fell across them, and they stepped back without a word. The great doors opened, the light poured in, and Rylan walked through. The crowd erupted not in cheers, not in laughter, but in a storm of voices. Some shouted his name, others cried out in terror. Some begged for mercy, others demanded war. But one thing was certain, no one would ever forget. Announcer's voice, once mocking, was quiet and broken now. 1 human against 10. And only the human walks away alive. Across the galaxy, the story would spread like fire, from planet to planet, from system to system. Whispers would grow into legends. Songs would be sung, records would be carved, and every alien child would hear the warning, do not surround a human unless you wish to fall. The warlord sat back in his throne, his hands shaking with rage. His empire had lost more than 10 warriors this day. It had lost its pride, its fearlessness, its belief that humans were nothing. Now every alien knew the truth. Humans were not weak. Humans were not prey. Humans were something far more dangerous. Reland stepped into the light, his body broken, but his spirit unshaken. He had no army, no weapons, no empire behind him. He was only one man. But one man had changed everything, and as the gates closed, behind him, the galaxy itself felt the weight of the moment. The age of underestimating humans was over. Asterisk.